What's up? I'm back. I have another speed paint for you. Before I begin, thanks for all the very sweet comments on my last voiceover speed paint. Friends and strangers alike left very thoughtful and encouraging notes. Thank you very much, guys. If you were one of those people who chimed in then, or hung out in the stream while this was drawn, this video is especially for you. Thank you very much. Let's get started. I began by laying down my lines. At this stage, I'm just focused on capturing the sort of vibe of the pose, so you'll notice that I don't draw any anatomy out or anything like that. I just go straight to lines. And a lot of my lines will wind up being part of the final line work too. I kind of struggle with making clean lines, so this is my happy medium. I draw all of my lines, and then for parts of the illustration that I really want to be clear or neatly communicated, like the face and around the face, I'll go over with a darker opacity second layer and lighten everything else for emphasis. This is a album cover redraw of Whatever Julie Wants by Julie London. I've been in a very jazzy mood lately, and I wanted to pick a character for this album cover redraw that felt appropriately jazzy and classy and a little bit nasty. And that was, for me, Lady Fictitious from our now defunct Waterdeep campaign. She is a Triton based on the mimic octopus, and for that reason, her skin is chromatophoric, meaning it can change colors. She's really fun to draw because I never have to do the same texture or color for her skin twice. I got all of my base colors laid down, and then I flattened my image and began rendering. I did this all on stream, so sorry for the oscillating gesture jump scare. It was really fun, and like I said earlier, I really appreciate anybody who joined me for it here on YouTube. I wanted to begin by rendering the fur coat and some of the blankets on the ground, because generally, if I begin with the face, I get burned out pretty quickly. That's my favorite part to render, so delaying the gratification is helpful for me in making sure that I actually render, to the extent necessary, all of the parts of the illustration. While rendering, you will probably also notice that I'm not adding any colors that aren't already on the canvas. I really like laying down my values and then my colors on top of the values because it removes some of the guesswork from later on where I have to decide, oh, well, which color is going to go next to each other, which value. Having everything roughly on the canvas first is super helpful to me. And it means the only thing I have to do is color pick from nearby areas to keep my colors consistent. I find clothing very difficult, as you might be able to tell. Drawing ruffles, drawing fur, it's all very challenging for me. So you'll see as I go through this part, I actually render this once and then completely abandon it. Which I wind up doing often when I'm coloring clothing, but also in general. I think it's nice to be able to kill your darlings a little bit. You know, going over something and rendering it and then realizing you didn't like the way you rendered it. A more useful application of your time generally is turning that layer off and starting over if you don't like the direction you're going in. Sometimes it's just not worth the effort to correct it. If later you do decide you liked the way that looked, then you can always turn the layer back on. The wonders of digital art. Here I'm rendering a lot of the lower ground blankets, re-rendering some parts of the fur coat, and just beginning the bottle on the bottom right-hand side. The further things get away from the focal point, which in this image is like the face and the chest, the less I like to render them. The more I like them to remain kind of impressionistic. I think that's generally good for focal points in your image. Spend your effort where you want the eye to look, and that's where the eye will go. You don't necessarily have to work every part of the image an equal amount, because then it'll all look very static. This part is from the second part of the stream, the part 2. And as you can probably tell, I was really struggling with some of my UI elements. I had a Spotify jam going so people could listen to music that YouTube definitely wouldn't want me to put on. And I kept screwing up my Spotify capture on OBS. So this was a fun learning experience. The stream was kind of scuffed, but I had a really good time hanging out with everybody. And as a side note, I learned that streaming really helps me stay focused. It's something I kind of struggle with now. I wasn't always an uphill battle like this, but I've lost some of my art attention span to like art block and probably other stuff. And so having a stream on, having the record button alone, really helps me stay on task. If you're one of those people who kind of struggles to get an image done, give it a try. It doesn't even have to be streaming. Just record yourself and tee yourself up to make a speed paint. And you might find that it's much easier to avoid like checking your social media or wandering around your room like I do. Give it a shot. Record your stuff. Just try not to accidentally shrink your window at one point and then leave it like that for maybe 30 minutes, like I did here. I'm gonna go ahead and find the silver lining in the fact that I didn't notice this was like this for however long. I was really in the zone and having a lot of fun talking to the people in chat. Throughout this next section, I'm rendering out the kind of hair tentacles and also a bit of the chest and kind of fading everything into the background. Tentacles that are closer to the focal point, so around the face and the chest, get the most attention, and they also get the darkest lines, like the outlines. Usually because of something that I think is called ambient occlusion, but maybe I'm totally misidentifying. Things that are further away from the quote-unquote camera, from the viewer, are lighter, or rather they are closer to the background color. So you might notice that some tentacles near the face are like red or almost black around the pseudo line art. As they get further back in space, they are more blue, they are faded out. And I think that that is helpful in establishing that there's like a presence to the air. Things are further away as they are less rendered and more close in color to the background. At this stage, I kind of deviate a little bit from what's on the page with respect to the shape and arrangement of the tentacles. When I go ahead and put colors down, when I put rough lines down, I'm just making a structure for myself. And it's at this stage in the painting where I really decide where things are gonna go, especially those things in the background. You'll see later that I draw in some, I add patches of transparency where you can see the background, and just generally make this shape that was previously just a blob of color more textured and refined. That's how I really like to approach rendering big illustrations like this. I've never been a person for clean line art or clean colors. Instead, I prefer to take a look at the whole image as a carving exercise. You lay down the pieces you want to include and then carve everything out. I always have a lot of fun with characters and illustrations that have sort of repetitive, simple, but fun shapes. Like drawing the tentacle hair of lady fixtures is one of my favorite things to do. It's just kind of zen for me. Now I'm going back in to add a little bit more definition to the fur coat and parts of the tentacles. I'm hoping with these refinements that it directs the eye more easily and establishes what's in the foreground, as well as what the texture of the thing is that you're looking at. And again, as I go through and render all of these parts, you'll notice that well, actually, you probably won't notice because the gesture's covering it, but I don't touch the color wheel basically at all. Once I put my colors down, those are my colors, with some very slight exceptions for parts of the picture I want to make pop. I just color pick and carve. I took a banana break because I was starting to feel like poison damage ticking because I'd been sitting and not eating and not drinking for too long. I guess that focus was really strong from the streaming. But after that I went back to refining the area around the face. I really like characters with like non-hair hair, if that makes sense, because their hair no longer has to obey any of the rules that we typically ascribe to illustrated hair, and you can use it as a framing device much more easily. So that's what I like to do. I like to use the big shapes of hair, or really everything, to move the eye around the screen and direct it toward my focal point. As I move on this point, I'm going to start drawing on the jewelry, which tends to be pretty tricky for me. Oh, banana jump scare. Jewelry and metal is something that I struggle with because it's all reflections, and reflections rely on having a pretty good understanding of where the light is coming from in your image, what the base color of your reflective object is, and frankly that's a lot of brain math. So this is another thing that is really helped by having all the colors on the screen before you start rendering. Reflections are just a collection of tints from the local colors and bounce of the light. So sometimes a gold object is not really gold at all. It's like light blue or desaturated like green. It all depends on the colors that are bouncing off of objects around it. Same thing with that bottle in the corner. Now I'm going in and throwing in some cross-hatching lines for extra texture. It's one of my favorite ways to do texture. It's another zen thing for me, and I like to use cross-hatching lines to add in little pops of color that both make blocks of color more interesting to look at and add some fun texture. I'm also refining some of the details on the jewelry. At this point, I'm just going in and adding pops of color to the shadows, little cross-hatching, some sparkles to my shiny jewelry, and to outline pieces of the hair that stand out against the background. I just like to keep things very loose, colorful. I focus more on the wholeness of the picture than perfectly copying my reference image. I like Impressionism. And then we're coming up on the end. I write out my text by hand because I don't tend to like the way fonts look over my style of drawing. And after that, it's down to some finishing touches and color adjustments, which is always the most painful part for me because I can never choose between the slightly more saturated and slightly less saturated options. If you stuck around this long, thank you very much for watching. I know this was a kind of long video, kind of yappy video, a little unscripted, but I'm very happy that you stuck through to the end. If any of my comments about recording your stuff to stay focused resonated with you, I hope you'll give it a shot, and I hope you'll share with me whatever you make. It was nice to spend this time with you. Thank you very much for watching.